typically earphones work better. That is true. I'm using earphones so I can hear and speak a little bit easier. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you everybody for um, coming to our webinar. Again, this is called Trust Sales. I'm the trustee. Now what? What do we do? You know, what do we look for? And here we have a couple of experts with us today, Mr. Dan Ihara, again, one of the top agents in the state. Let's see, works with trustees quite often. And also we have with us Julie Suen, an estate planning attorney who knows all about trusts. Julie, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, hi everybody. Julie Suen here. I am a solo practitioner for the islands. I specialize in estate planning as well as trust administration. I have a Master of Laws degree from the Richardson, and I actually came from Canada. So I did practice law for 6 years in Canada before I moved here. And during that time, I spent a lot of time litigating and was involved in some pretty big estate litigation cases. That's what led me to my practice now. I endeavor to help others to avoid sibling rivalry and litigation by properly planning for their estate.
Great. Great. Thank you very much.
Good day, eh?
Dan, you want to say a few words too before we get started?
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. You know, we built this presentation because, you know, practically every week we get a call from a family member who mom and dad just passed away, and it's like they got thrown into this job called successor trustee and they don't know what to do. And we've been working with folks in this area for many, many years, and hundreds of clients that we've gone through. We said, you know what, let's just put a model together that can provide valuable information for anybody who might be going through this kind of situation. So we trust that today it'll be of value to you, and we'd love to hear your feedback at the end to let us know what you thought about the information we provided. So thanks everybody. Let's get started. Oh, you got a question? Are you here to learn?
You're here to learn for yourself or a loved one? Good question.
Can you put that in the chat box? Everybody who's here, are you here for yourself? Oh, May said for both. Good.
Both. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, a lot of folks are planning for their parents, but also planning for themselves, right? What we're finding now is the largest transfer of wealth is occurring as we speak, because the baby boomers, the largest generation of adults, their parents are passing on, all right? Our parents are older now and they're passing on, and now we're inheriting a lot of wealth in real estate in particular. What do we do with it? How do we manage it? What is needed when they're gone? What are the steps? And today we're going to cover a lot of that. I think all of it, actually. Cool. Okay, shall we go on to the next slide? Julie?
Okay, 6 things to know as the trustee. 1, you're going to build your team of professionals. 2, understand the trust. What is a trust and why do we need one? 3, how to protect yourself from liability. 4, how do I handle sibling rivalry? 5, when should I sell? And 6, how do I get the most money from our sale? And those are the 6 topics that our speakers will be covering today.
Cool. Next slide. So when building your team, you know, people who call to us and say, yeah, I got to sell my house, my parents' house, they passed away. One of the first questions we ask them is, do you have a trust attorney? And many of them really don't. Many of them mom had an attorney that designed their trust 15 years ago and they never revisited it again. And they've seen the document, but they got to go find it, that type of thing. So they really don't have anybody that they can rely on. If you do, then that's great. Continue that. And you're going to want to know what your responsibilities are as a successor trustee. Then obviously a realtor, because in the event that you, the trust typically says upon the last person's demise, the property will be sold and the heirs will split it in the proportion that I dictate. And so definitely you want to sell it for as much money as you can get. The next is a CPA, because obviously you're going to have tax consequences, or you may be concerned about what your tax liabilities are. So that's not an area that anybody else other than whoever's going to defend you against the IRS, which would be your CPA or your tax preparer. Right? Another person would be the financial planner. In the event that you know, our parents are still around, how much money will they have and how long will it last them? When they're gone, okay, how do we, where is everything? Where are all the accounts? And how do we split this up, right? Because eventually you're gonna have to do that as a trustee to help liquidate. The other things is also insurance. Like, do they have property insurance? Well, you gotta make sure if you're gonna keep the property, you gotta keep making sure it gets paid. Do they have long-term care insurance if they're still around and they need help and they're in a hospital? You're going to want to know their life insurance provider, I'm sorry, long-term care insurance provider, the account number and the phone number, because in the event that they need that care, they're not going to be probably at home. They're probably going to be in a care home or a hospital. And then life and disability, right? We want to know what mom and dad have, because that was designed to take care of them and your family as well. So all of those things are things that we want to make sure that you're aware of when somebody passes on, you know, what kind of team member you have. And then also Medicaid in the event that if that's applicable in your financial situation. You know, wise man once told me that you need a good plan and you need good execution, right? That kind of makes sense, right? That's pretty simple. And then he also said to me one day, he said, you know, Dan, a bad execution makes a good plan look bad. And so it's really important to want to have a good plan and also to have a good execution. And that's what we've been able to do over the last 15 odd years and hundreds of clients we've helped. One, we create strategies. We'll have strategy sessions with folks. Then we'll create a plan and then we execute on that plan. Right? It's not that hard, pretty simple. And today you're going to have an opportunity to schedule a free, no obligation time to sit down and create a strategy for yourself, for your family, in creating a legacy.
But then that's why we have experts on your team, right? That's why you want the best in the business, like Julie
Absolutely.
and the Ihara team.
Absolutely, right? Because
So in the chat box, you know, if you are looking for people to be on your team or any roles specifically, you know, go ahead and let us.
yeah, let us know what you need help with. I mean, if you need help with a CPA or an attorney or a financial planner, you know, it's interesting. We have 4 clients now that are in that situation where mom and dad passed away. It's now time to sell the house. And I asked them those questions. I asked them, do you have an attorney? I said, yeah, I think so. They found out that person and then they ended up contacting, which was good. Then I asked them, do you have a CPA? They go, no, mom did it at H&R Block. So, well, this might be a little bit more than that. So we have a CPA you could contact. And then financial planner, and they go, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Like, what happens when it's sold? Where does all the money go, right? And so we have a number of financial planners that work with families and older adults who will prepare and protect that asset for the long term and to be able to disseminate it to the proper parties as needed, right? So good. Building your team, number 1, really important.
Okay, 2, understanding the trust. What is it and what do I do?
Yeah, and a lot of that, none of us are, other than Julie, and maybe Clay a little, are trained in understanding what the trust is. What is it? Why do I need it? And so since we have Julie, let's pick your brain a bit here, Julie. Why do I need one?
Yeah, okay. So In estate planning, the most used instrument is the revocable living trust, and I'm sure that's a term that most of us have heard of. And what that is it's an instrument that is basically an agreement with yourself. So before you pass away, you set up this instrument where you can put assets inside of it, so that after you pass away, or if you become incapacitated, the provisions that you put into this agreement will then apply to these assets. That's different from, say, a will, which is what an instrument that most of you have heard of. And it's also traditionally the main instrument that people establish to plan for their end of life. And the difference between a will and the revocable living trust is that the will requires the court process in order for the distribution to take place. So that's called probate. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit down the slides. But the main thing about the trust, it's your instrument, your own agreement. You can put almost anything inside of it that's not against the law. And then those provisions will kick in and apply upon your death, upon your incapacity.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I think you told me once this, Julie, that it sounds like an instruction manual for when you're gone of what to do with your assets.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And it avoids probate altogether.
That's huge, right? That's huge. Man, so the other thing that I've seen is when people buy properties, they buy them in their name, but they never put it into the trust. They have a trust, and they have a property, but it's not protecting it, right? Because the trust is like that protected bucket.
Yeah, right. So when you look at the trust as an instrument, like a bucket, if it's not in there, then obviously the agreement that you set up, and it doesn't matter how great, hey, Helene, nice to see you, how great these provisions are in this trust agreement, they're not going to apply to that asset that's not inside of this instrument.
Yes.
Other things, the trust it could be very complicated, so I'm not going to go too in depth into it. But I do want to say there are other features inside of the trust that sometimes are not being mentioned, like asset protection. For example, asset protection can be written into the trust so that your beneficiaries will benefit from that after you're gone. There are other provisions that works with tax basis, income tax, things like that. So lots of creativity.
Very good. So somebody asked, how much does it cost to make a revocable living trust?
So the market is pretty wide in scope in terms of the spectrum of legal fees that attorneys charge. I can say that I know most firms charge in the range of $5,000, and some of the bigger firms downtown charge above that. Could be anywhere between $7,000 and more for a married couple. But for me, I'm a little bit under market.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So I guess if you're interested to talk more, we can actually give you Julie's contact information at the end, and yeah, just reach out to her and ask those personal pointed questions that can help you move forward. If you don't have a trust, you really, really want one. Well, let me back up. You want a trust if you have assets, right? If you don't have assets, you really don't need it. But once you start gathering assets, and the more assets you gather, the more protection you want, and the more versatility you want on creating a legacy, then you're going to want to sit down with a professional and talk to them about how to protect you and what your goals are.
Yeah, I want to also add to what Dan just said. If you have minor children, that's another situation where you should set up a trust. I saw a question just popped up here from May.
Yeah, should our self-directed IRA in rental properties be included in our living trust?
Okay.
What do you think?
So I'm in a bit of a conundrum here because the nature of the IRA with the new established Secure Act. So the Secure Act came into effect January of this year. And what that requires is any designated beneficiaries to make all minimum distributions within a 10-year time frame after the person's death. So that may have significant income tax consequences for most beneficiaries. However, I see that you have rental properties inside of your IRA. With respect to real estate, it doesn't even matter how much those real estate properties are worth. It's always probate if you don't have a trust. So, but if you have rollover options with the IRA and you've designated, say, your spouse as a beneficiary, it will roll over to your spouse, so that could prevent probate. I hope that answers your question. So it depends on what's written into your retirement plans.
Okay.
Interesting.
Thanks for sharing, Julie. Well, we have a lot of information to cover. So what do I need to do as a trustee? Now this list here, this is an abbreviated list. This actually came from Julie and her organization, because they obviously do this a lot. And we've thank you for sharing this, Julie. But number one on the list is really taking care of yourself and your family, right? When somebody is passed on, don't worry about anything except your family, right? That's the most important thing to you. Everything else is stuff, right? Take care of your family. It's absolutely the most important thing. Once you get through the mourning period and taking care, make sure everybody in your family is okay, then you really want to start seeking advice, right? You want to seek advice from your CPA and your financial planner and your attorney, right? As well as even your realtor, as far as, what should you do with what kind of plans do you want to have going forward? A number of things that you're going to want, if you're going to need a lot of death certificates. Julie, how many death certificates do you recommend people get?
At least 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I've heard 6. I've heard even up to 20, depending on how many accounts you have, right? What happens is if you go to the mortuary, typically the funeral houses help you with that. If you don't, then you're going to want to make sure you get enough. So if somebody asks you, I think the number I heard was like 20, because how many accounts does that person have, right? Every account, they need a death certificate, original one, right? Getting the trust documents. What's interesting is, a lot of folks, the adult children who are now the successor trustee, some of them have never seen the trust document, but they were told they're the successor trustee. And they've never read it before, which is really scary. But some has it in their possession, though they just don't understand it. If you have questions, that's when you want to bring it up to your attorney. So when we say seek advice, yeah, that's what it is. Tell me what I need to do as a successor trustee. Okay. Here's a really good one. Changing the mailing address of the trustor. So if mom passes away and the house is vacant and you don't live there anymore, right? Her mail's still going there. Well, you got to get to that mail, right? You can't let it sit in the mailbox. You have to get that thing forwarded to your house if you're the successor trustee, and make sure that you understand all of her accounts and what information is coming to her. You want to elaborate on that, Julie?
Yeah. So I want to actually go back to taking care of yourself. Most of the things that are required in the trust administration don't need to take place within the first 9 months at minimal. And some trust agreements, like the ones that I prepare, we put down a minimal time for the trustee to do whatever they need to do administratively before any trust needs to be set up. So this prevents, say, a beneficiary coming to your door and knocking on your door saying, hey, where's my money? So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of people come to my office upon, their wife's death, the parent's death, and they're in this anxiety because they don't know what to do. I just want to emphasize that within at least 9 months after the passing of that person, you don't have to worry about anything yet.
Who puts that 9 months on? Is that the IRS?
That's the IRS.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
I do like that here you have to seek advice from CPA and attorney. Some people um, underemphasize the importance of the CPA, but there are tax filings that you have to make within that 9-month time frame. And sometimes CPAs, if they're not very knowledgeable, they might tell you, oh, there's, you know, you don't have to file this because you don't owe any estate taxes. That is wrong. Okay, if there's something you have to come out from this seminar today, remember I said this. Okay, you do need to file that form 706 because of tax elections and things like that. And, you know, so I will leave my contact here for further questions, but just remember that.
That's huge. That's
Yeah,
huge.
it is huge.
Yeah, that's worth the price of admission. Oh wait, it was free. No, just joking. Cool. Hey, an EIN number. Can you explain what an EIN number and why do I need an EIN number after mom and dad pass away?
When the trust is a revocable trust, that's when the person setting up the trust is still alive. It's called grantor trust status, meaning the trust and the person are one of the same tax entity, so they don't have to file a separate tax return. Once that person dies, the trust becomes irrevocable. When that happens, it's no longer grantor trust status, meaning it has to become a separate entity requiring its own tax entity number.
Hmm. And what does EIN stand for? I
I
forgot.
forget.
Employer
I'm a-
identification number.
What was it?
There we go. Employer
Employer
identification.
identification number.
See, I always got confused. Like, why would it be employer identification when they're not employed? They're dead. No, that's why it was a joke. I knew what it was.
They still get
It's
it.
like, it doesn't. I don't get it, right? But anyways, so it's kind of like. So correct me if I'm wrong. Then your social security number identifies you tax basis while you're alive, and then an EIN is when you're dead.
For a revocable trust, that is
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Great. Just want to bring clarity for everybody's purpose, because one of the things that we let people know is you need to get an EIN number, and they go, "What's that? Why do I need it?" And that's why we wanted to put this on here, so you know. It's a simple form. Let us know if you have any questions with it. We can guide you through that. Khalil is a master at EIN numbers. And then the trust certificates. Talk to me about what is a trust certificate and why do you need it?
It's actually a very simple document that basically says I now step up as a trustee, and then it usually attaches the death certificate, and then you can take that document and deal with, say, real estate or banks or other third parties to prove that this is my role now. I'm trustee of this trust.
So that's a requirement by anybody who you're trying to get the assets of.
Yeah, it's not a requirement by law, but definitely that's what's commonly used.
Okay, okay. So it's not a legal requirement though, but that's customary in, like, the banks. Will the bank give me my mom's money if I don't have that?
No.
Yeah, likely not, right? Right.
Yeah.
It's a validation process, I guess. Okay,
It's
cool. Well,
used up. Yeah, exactly.
kind of important to know, right? I mean, if you don't know that, you go
Yeah.
to the bank. I can't get my mom's money. Well, you don't have a trust certificate. Okay. So, Julie, your attorney, or just call Julie, she can help you. And then notifying beneficiaries. Talk about that.
Okay. So trustees under the law, they have a legal responsibility to notify beneficiaries within a reasonable time frame. So the law doesn't actually tell us how long that time frame is. It uses the term reasonable. So once the trustee accepts his or her role as a trustee, it would be time to notify the beneficiaries and also give them a copy of the trust.
That's good. That's good. And then controlling assets in the home. What is that, like locking the door? Or?
That would be a part of it. I mean, obviously, if the person setting up the trust was living with other people in the house, you can't lock them out of the house. But anything valuable would be the trustee's role to maintain and protect. Basically, the trustee has the right and the obligation to keep track of what the trust of the person who passed away, what he or she had before passing. So inventorying of assets is a trustee's job. So that's just a part of it.
Hey, there was a question May asked, does a trust certificate designate the deceased personal representative?
No, that's done by the will.
Oh,
And the
okay.
personal, and you know, if you already have a trust, the personal representative's role is very limited. It's just making sure that the final tax returns are filed and that the estate is properly closed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good, good. Thanks for that clarity. Contact trustors, employee benefit provider, and Social Security Department. That's something that might get not seen, right? Like the truster's employee benefit provider. So you got to know where they worked and how to reach them. How do you do that?
Yeah. I think if the person was working and they had some kind of employee retirement program, or that, I hope they have the documents handy, and it's known by the trustee or the personal representative. Otherwise, I don't know how you would, you would have
Right?
to track back to who they work for and contact each individual department to find out. But the Social Security Department it's very important for them to know that this person has passed away.
Is there a requirement when you got to let them know?
That one is actually as soon as possible.
Oh, okay, okay. And then a time of death appraisal. Talk to us about that.
So this is with respect to higher worth assets such as real estate. It's important to know what a piece of property is worth at the time of death. It definitely plays into tax basis. So, and also I mentioned earlier, for that Form 706 to be filed, it's important to know what the deceased had at the time of death. So that number goes into there. But of course, if you're working with, a qualified CPA, he or she would be able to advise you how you can get those numbers.
Yeah, basically the time of death appraisal is used because the government's going to look for capital gains taxes whenever you sell real estate. And what you want to do is you want to minimize your capital gain taxes. And the way you do that is their cost basis is what you buy it at typically. And then when you pass away, you get a stepped up cost basis of the date of death. So if my mom bought her property in 1980 and today in 2020, she bought it for $300,000, and today in 2020, 40 years later, it's worth $1 million, right? Well, if she passes away, then it transfers over to me at the time of death appraisal, which would be the value at the time of her passing. I've heard, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard that the IRS, a number of CPAs have told me this. I don't know if it's right. I'm not a CPA. Anytime if somebody passes away if you sell within 6 months, typically the IRS is going to honor and acknowledge the sale price as being the appraised value at the time of death. Have you heard that? Yeah. Okay.
I have heard of that, but again, I'm not a CPA, so don't hold me accountable.
We have no idea. Talk to your CPA. That's a good guy to get your answers from. Okay.
But I want to add quickly to what Dan had just said about tax basis. Sometimes I do see trust agreements that are prepared in a way that doesn't properly allow the full step up in basis to be taken at the time of a couple's death. So that's, I don't want to go into that subject today, but that's, if that's something you want to learn more about, definitely contact me and I can talk about it.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff there. Okay, next slide, please. No trust.
So what happens? No trust. What happens if I don't have a trust?
Okay. So this is a very general statement. No trust, then there's probate. It's actually if you have under $100,000 worth of probatable assets, you don't have to go through probate. But if you have anything above $100,000, or if you own any real estate interest at all, even if it's $5,000 worth of real estate, you must go through probate. Like I mentioned, because of the way that it's set up as an instrument, your provisions inside its agreement will apply to it. The court doesn't need to look into it. What I do want to emphasize is those assets have to be inside of the instrument in order for the instrument to work. If you don't properly fund your assets into the trust, which is actually a very common problem I've seen, then you will have to go through probate. And that's a lot of hassle. It's a lot of time. It's about a year at least in our state, and it's costly. Also, if you own property outside of the state of Hawaii, which a lot of folks do, they have property in Las Vegas, property in California. If you don't have a trust set up, there will be ancillary probate, meaning there will be a separate legal probate action in those states where you own property, plus whatever you own here. So it's triple, the hassle level. That's why it's good to have a trust.
Yeah.
Julie, what are the typical costs that you would anticipate, going through probate, like the time and expenses?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the time, a year is like really good, really fast.
Wow.
It's fast.
That's you're expecting that, and then I know most firms on the market are charging about $5,000 for just like a simplified probate action.
Yeah.
So it's costly.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks call us, say, hey, I want to sell my house. I get there, I go, oh, who's this person? Oh, that's mom. So, oh, where's mom? Oh, mom died 3 years ago. I said, oh, but I want to sell it now. So, well, unfortunately, we have a problem. You're going to have to go through probate. And so we can help you with that. And so we have another attorney who focuses on probate work, and then we help them get through that process. But yeah, I think we've done multiple of them, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, anywhere from, I've seen as short as 6 months, and I've seen as long as 3 years.
Wow.
It depends on if it's contested, right? If it's
Yeah.
a non-contested probate, it's so much easier. If it's contested, wow, it may not end. It could be like that, right? And it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars if it's really contested, if it's a big asset. Yeah, it could be ugly.
But we don't have to worry about it if we sell
No.
the trust, right? And so as you have seen, for somebody who has property in a trust, it's just by a deed. It's you do a deed and then it's done. It's so much easier.
So
And
we
I
got a
know
quick
Julie-
question.
Oh, yeah,
Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
So what Julie, I know what you do is when you build a trust for somebody and they have assets, you actually make sure it's in the trust. Is that right?
Yes. So after we set up your estate planning, I usually plan for a meeting at the very end when I deliver the documents to you, but also that during that meeting, a very important process takes place, what I call the asset allocation, where we look through all of your assets to make sure that you know how to properly designate the assets as well as how to properly fund your trust. Because again, I emphasize the biggest issue with the biggest problem I've seen people do with their trust is not properly funding it.
Good point. Oh, go ahead with the question, Khalil.
Oh, Josh asked that when you gather a new asset, is there an additional fee to update the living trust on top of that initial $5,000 or whatever it is payment? No costs for putting more assets into the trust?
Oh, no. Okay, so this is a really great question. Because if that was the case, it'd be very expensive for you to get your assets, okay? So again, because the trust is like what Dan kind of described as a bucket, like whatever, an instrument. And so we don't change the trust. If your trust is properly set up, there's no changes to it that needs to be done. So there's no cost to that. It's just whatever you're funding into the trust. So say if it's a bank account, you go to the bank and talk to them about it. That's free. If it's say a piece of real property, then you just have somebody prepare a deed and you put it into the trust. And that's a few $100s.
Yeah, that we can guide them through. So we have a lot of clients that are constant investors. You know, every several years they buy real estate, they're investing, and they have one trust. They don't have to change it like Julie said, but they have to put that asset into the trust, which is just a deed. So we can definitely help take care of that. All of our clients are covered there. Great, thanks.
I do see that Helene has asked a question about tenants by the entirety option. I'm not sure what she wanted to ask about that. So if she wanted to clarify that question, put it in the chat box and I would be happy to answer.
Okay, great. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, number 3, out of the 6, how do I protect myself from liability?
Okay.
I guess a general question about the liability.
Great, great. The next slide. Well, a lot of our clients, they're thrown into this role, into this job of being a successor trustee, and their biggest concern is, I don't want that to come back at me, right? I'm just trying to help out the family. It's, you know, I got thrown in, I didn't want this job, but I got to do it. It's a lot of work. But main thing is, how do I protect myself? Can you help me protect myself? And the answer is probably so, yeah, as long as we do a number of things right. We broke it down into real estate assets and then financial assets. You know, the world of the real estate assets, as well as the financial, you want to make sure you understand your trust document. So sit with your attorney, review your trust, make sure you understand what your liabilities are and how you can protect yourself in the legal sense. When it comes to your real estate, the other thing we do is, well, one is we have to know what you have, right? So how do you do that? Well, you pull your preliminary title report. That's what we do for our clients. We can do that. We can fill out a seller's disclosure statement. That's what Kaleo works on when he helps our clients get their property ready for sale. We also will pull the survey up front to make sure you know what you have and who owns the perimeter improvements, because liability can show up in that area as well. And then some people have chosen to do a pre-home inspection, meaning I don't know this house. I'm worried about all the things that are wrong. And I say, well, if you're in that case, then we can get you a pre-home inspection, which is a home inspection before you go to the market. And then you just share that with every buyer, right? The main thing is disclosing everything you know about the property, right? Liability will attach to a person when they sell real estate, oftentimes through a failure to disclose. And so that's why we spend a lot of time. Kaleo will meet you at the property and go through the seller's disclosure statement in detail to make sure that you're protected. And then on the financial side, oh, sorry, let me move this. Obviously, you're going to meet with your financial planner, right? You want to say, okay, where are all the assets? That's one of the biggest challenges the successor trustee will likely have. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julie. Like, what are all the assets, right? Where are they, right? Mom and dad had this bank account that they never serviced for 15 years, but it's somewhere in Oklahoma, right? But there's money there, right? We got to find those things, right? And then your CPA, right? They're going to need to be dialed in with your financial planner as well, along with your insurance provider, and then your legal support, which is really your trust attorney. So having your team identifying who they are, what their roles are, how they work together, really, really important, really, really important. That's why when I meet with people who are thinking of selling a home, I have 3 simple questions. Who's your financial planner? Who's your CPA? Who's your attorney? And who's your insurance provider? Right. Actually, that's 4 questions. Okay, next slide. I think we're running out of time, so I'm worried.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah.
Helene did clarify her question, and I just want to touch on it for a second. When you have a property in trust, it's usually titled tenants in common. She says that with the new law, we can change title of the property to, I believe she meant tenants by the entirety, to protect the property from suit. Can you provide information on this?
Yeah,
Julie,
this is actually,
would
it's
you
a
be
great
able to
question.
speak on this? says with the
Yeah,
new, go ahead.
yeah, it's a good question because you know we all of us here have you know, Kaleo, Dan, and I, we all have experience dealing with titling property into tenancy by the entirety. And we can all speak to, you know, tenancy by the entirety is a way of holding the asset so that there is protection from, you know, litigation, creditors, bankruptcy. What the law did to establish the tenancy by the entirety is to basically protect marital property. So as between husband and wife, if, you know, the husband is being sued or is in business trouble, there's no way that the wife should be left on the street without a home, right? So that's the foundation of why that that kind of titling of a property is allowed. But with the new law, I think Helene is referring to a new statute that was put into place in year 2012, which allowed an asset to be funded into the trust by a married couple who was holding the property in tenancy by the entirety, funding that into the trust without losing tenancy by the entirety. So that's that's something that I do put inside of my trust by way of a provision. Also with the deed, you do put the public notice in there that this property, although now I'm funding into the trust, it's meant to be still held in tenancy by the entirety. So I think that clarifies your question. So now, even if you do a trust, you don't lose that protection.
Mm.
Okay.
Very good.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think we do, Dan's right, we do have to move quickly to get through everything within our allotted time. So how do you handle sibling rivalries? Have you seen that come up? I know I have.
Yeah, we see it every day almost. Oh, families love each other, right? Yeah, they all do. Yeah, no. So I think one of the tips is communication. Right? Communication is key, and making sure everyone's on the same page and make sure we're transparent. Unfortunately, though, a lot of them that we deal with, it's just too deeply seated. I mean, this going back from small kid time when he stole the sister's toy and the sister got mad at him, and this was when they were 8 years old. You know, it goes deep, and you're dad's favorite, and you're mom's favorite, and you know all of this sibling rivalry shows up, right? I think it's one of the things that's important. Here's a funny story. So I'll leave you with this tit. A guy comes in and he says, "I have 3 kids." I go, "Great. Tell me about your kids." Because in our conversations with me, we're going to talk about your family because we know usually what matters most is your family. So he says, "I got 3 kids." I go, "Great. Tell me about your kids." "Yeah, I got a daughter and I got a son and I got this other guy." I go, "Tell me about the other guy." "Yeah, no, he's not going to get anything." "Okay, well, just tell me about him. What's going on here?" I said, "Well, you know, he doesn't come around and we've had a falling out years ago, but he's not going to get anything." I said, "Okay, I'm sure there's a rightful reason for that. But here's a question for you. Now, this is a senior who's planning his future, right? He's planning his legacy. And he comes to me and says, no, I'm going to sell this asset, but this kid's not going to get anything." I said, "Okay, that's fine. Here's my question to you." I said to him, I said, "When you're gone, do you want your kids to love each other?" He goes, "Well, of course I do." I said, "Well, you're creating an environment by which that's not going to happen. You see, you just isolated one of your children because they did something to you that you didn't like. And right or wrong, I'm not here, there's no judgment on that. That's just what you chose to do. Now, when you're gone, these 2 get all the assets, this one does not. How do you think they're going to feel? What do you think the guy that got nothing is going to feel after you're gone?" They're not going to blame you. They're going to blame the siblings. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault. So I asked him at the end of the meeting, so I asked him again, "So what are you planning on doing?" He said, "Yeah, you're right. It wouldn't be fair to the other 2 that I love that the brother that I don't like doesn't like them anymore." Right? And he started to think about that, and he said, "You know what, maybe I got to have a conversation with him." Right? And really what we do a lot of the time is really talking about families and how do we bring families together versus break them apart. And how do you handle those situations where they understand everyone has to understand the impact of their decisions. And because we've seen so many of these cases where there's so much division in families, there are ways you can get ahead of it if we have more conversations. And a lot of folks use me as a mediator, so to speak. Bring the family in, let's talk about everything that's going on, and leave with a clear air, knowing that what the future is going to bring and what mom and dad's wishes are will be handled to their desire. And really, that's the only solution I have for having sibling rivalry. Julie, any tips?
As the trustee, if you're one of the siblings, you gotta know to keep your roles clear. Okay, legally as a trustee, you are fiduciary. You have fiduciary duties, and then you as a beneficiary, I know you have your own interests. So that's how people get in trouble a lot of the times under the law. Like, you have to understand you can't mingle those roles, and and I've seen siblings or a child who's a beneficiary under the trust, they're also the trustee, they start spending the money and maybe covering expenses that were necessary to handle the funeral or whatever else. Like, you have to keep track, keep clear. Okay, that's mom's money still. That's not, so everything has to be in separate accounts. Keep really good paper trail, because those things can get you in trouble. But yeah.
Great tip, great tip. Well, for those of you, we got 9 minutes left. We're going to run over time, guys. I think we should finish all the content. If you have to leave, feel free. You won't hurt our feelings. Feel free to dial out. But if you can, we'll finish up. And it'll probably take a little longer than 1 o'clock today. So next question is, should I sell? Right. Well, the real question is, what does the trust say? Right? If you're the trustee, your job is to fulfill the wishes of the trust. What does the trust say? Well, what does it normally say? Well, it normally says to liquidate and split it, right? So do you have a choice in the matter? Not really. The only choice you have is when and with whom, right? Because most trusts don't really have a time frame by which you have to be selling the property. And that's where the biggest challenge comes, that's where the dispute comes, where one wants to sell and one doesn't, right? That's where most of the dispute comes. Well, we can go to the next slide. So when should I sell really dictates, a lot of people say, well, my job as a trustee is to get the most money for the asset. Very true. So let me just show you and take you on a journey since 1987. 1987 to 1990, the values grew dramatically, right? It went from like 165,000 up to about 380 in a matter of just 4 or 5 years, right? It peaked out in 1990 and it took a bit of a dip. After every peak, the market drops, right? It took a bit of a slide. In fact, that recession took 12 years to recoup, meaning if you were to sell in 1990 or wait, you would have to wait 12 years to get to the same price of selling that property, right? That's that one recession. We took a growth period here from 2000 to 2007. We saw the largest creation of wealth in America in real estate, in particular in Hawaii. That asset grew 15 to 35% every single year. Crazy amount of appreciation. What happened at the peak in 2007? Well, it started to slide again, right? How long did that recession take? It took 7 years to recover. So from 2007, to get to the same values, you had to wait 7 years to 2014 to get to the same values. Well, what happened? Well, we saw growth from 2010 on up to now. We have seen, ladies and gentlemen, a 9 or 10 year expansion in real estate. And real estate only really goes into 7 to 8 year expansions. This was 10 years almost. What happened after the peak? Well, January of 2019 was the first month we've seen year over year the values decline. And we started seeing that decline happen since then, even before COVID, right? What do we expect to happen? What happens after every peak? Well, we see a decline. Fortunately for us in Hawaii, we have what economists call good DNA, meaning we have a little island surrounded by warm water in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, high desirability, low supply, right? So economists tell us it's all about supply and demand, right? So when demand is stable and supply is low, what happens to values? They typically keep going up, right? Well, the biggest drop we've ever seen from 2007 down to the bottom of that market was a 7% drop in values, right? During this time period of that recession, this last recession, states like Arizona, Nevada, Florida, they lost 40, 50, 60% of values. We, on the other hand, lost 7%. Will values go down in the near future? Yeah, my guess is yeah. I mean, when have we ever seen Waikiki empty? When have we ever not let tourists come to our state? When have we ever not been able to go to a baseball game? Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the beginning of a recession that we haven't felt yet. We haven't felt it yet. We're going to start to feel the recession probably in the next 6 to 12 months. You know, because this forbearance program is what most people are going to start to go through, right? Say that's 6 months of maximum. And then it'll take another 3 months beyond that for real default to show up, right? Now you're looking at the end of this year, early of next. We're going to start to see that show up very soon in real estate. Another thing that's going to happen in our market is once what's good is we see us rebounding, we see things getting more open. Once open houses become available again, you're going to see more listings on the market. What does that mean? Supply is going to rise. Fortunately, demand's still good. Fortunately, the interest rates are outrageously low, right? 3.25%. That's a crazy amount of, it's the cost of money is so low, right? And we call that leverage in our business. How do you build wealth through real estate? Through leverage, for the low cost of the money. And so what we're going to see now is we're going to see the market peak out. It's already peaked out. We're going to see it dip a bit, and it's going to stay down for a bit. It's going to take a while, years, before we recover to today's values. So if somebody were to ask me, when should I sell? I say, if you can hold on for 10 years or more, hold on. Because after 10 years, it'll probably rise again. Yeah. So if you don't have to sell, don't sell. Don't sell. Keep it. And likely you'll be able to appreciate the appreciation over time. If you're thinking of selling between now and 5, 7, 10 years, time's not your friend at this point. Right? You're better off sooner than later getting on the market, getting it sold. And that's what we're starting to see. We're starting getting a lot of phone calls. I was on this morning. People know this. People know that the values are going down, and if they're selling, sooner is better than later. Right? So just depends on your situation. Again, to summarize, if you can hold on for 7, 10 years, hold on, or more, actually, then hold on, don't sell it. I wouldn't. If you're thinking of, you're going to make a change of a life change, location change, you want to improve the performance of your asset, any of those things, sooner is better than later. Okay. So, where are we at, Khalil?
Okay, this is the last point. How do I get the most money from the sale of the trust?
Well, so I think the first step is having a sound marketing strategy, right? What does that look like? Understand your product, understand where it sits in the market, and understand the target market you're trying to appeal to. Then build a strategy or a marketing strategy around that that is sound and that will appeal to the right market to get you to find the buyer and get over the threshold to the right pricing. The other is pricing. You know, you price it well in the market. There's buyers out there that are highly motivated buyers out there. We're opening up escrows every single week with buyers and sellers because it's still active. It's still really active. And the ones that are active are the ones that are priced well. If it's over the market, it's going to sit, and they're just going to wait until you call uncle and bring it down to the market values that are acceptable. And the last one is the condition of the home. Now's a great time to put a little sweat equity or time, money, and effort into improving its value and making it look as good as possible in the market, right? Because that's how you're going to get the most money for the sale of the home.
And I'll just touch on that from what you just said. Right now, there are a lot of buyers on the market.
Yeah.
Interest rates are the lowest they have ever been. There's a ton of buyers. And you would think COVID might, affect their whole mindset, but no, there are more buyers right now than I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And there's less inventory.
Yes.
So for sellers right now, there are bidding wars going on. It's
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. If you're priced correctly, you are likely to get over asking right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah. Well, right now, because of the low inventory, it's really solid for our sellers, right? We put on, what, 3 or 4 listings, and most of those are in escrow within a week. Here's an example of getting it ready, some curb appeal. Painting can make a huge difference on a home with a lot of deferred maintenance. The yard's overgrown, and the trees are growing through the roof, and the paint. So just clearing it out, spending a few grand can get you a lot of money. Next. Painting makes a huge difference, right? A lot of the properties that we're selling are older. We have older clients, and they just had a lot of deferred maintenance, but you shine that thing up with some nice paint, yeah, it makes it look really good. Kitchens are hugely valuable. So here's a question, put it in the chat because I want to hear your answer. Husband and wife walks into a house to buy a home. Who makes the decision? I want to see the answers on this one. Who makes the decision? Who's the decision maker? Well, that was fast.
Because I'm looking right now with my husband.
Okay, we can't just have women do this. Come on, we're the guys. We're the guys. Michelle says, wife, yeah, you're all right. What are the 2 most important rooms in the house? Put that in the chat. Well, I know who's going to answer that because it's going to be the women. And what do the women want? Kitchens and baths. Yeah, absolutely. So our goal is again, when selling real estate, it's really about finding that target market. Then how do I appeal to them? How do I appeal to them? Right. All right, next slide. Here's a really old bathroom. This is in Royal Summit, really nice neighborhood, but it looked dated, and it would have cost over $25,000 to redo this huge bathroom. It was a big bathroom. Instead, we painted it and glazed the countertop, glazed the tile, and it made it look newer. Next. Next, please. Wow, what's this? Okay, so this is a flow chart. And this is when somebody comes to us and they say, what's the process? Starting on the left side, when we first meet with somebody, we sit down and we create a strategy session. There's no cost, no obligation. If you want to do that, just let us know in your chat, and we'll set that up. And really, it's all about understanding what's important to you, right? Understand your situation, all the variables that are involved in your life and in your financial situation and in your real estate world. And then what we're going to do is we can hear from you, and I want to hear what your goals are. What, if you could, would you, right? Let's dream a bit, right? How do we create that amazing world that you deserve, and how do we create a legacy worth living beyond when your lifetime? And then we start figuring out, okay, what are the options now, right? Once we create a plan, then we come into an agreement with some paperwork. We sign the agreement. We put a calendar of events together, basically literally putting out a calendar of what's going to happen when. We'll do a coming soon photo, and then we get the home ready for sale. Now, we have an entire listing management team that does the next 2 columns, home prep and the marketing, right? Whether you need repairs or cleaning or staging or photos, we always do photos, professional ones. The listing managers take care of that. And then we also will complete the seller's disclosure statement in advance before even going into escrow, right? Because we want to know what we're selling, but also we want to let your buyer know what they're buying even before they buy. And then we also want to have a survey done in advance as well. So these are things that are different in our world because we front load a lot of our services because we're preventing failure to show up by doing some things in advance, right? And then we'll launch some marketing strategies. Well, the internet marketing, the professional photos, videos, drones, the agent guided tours. Now that we are having virtual open houses as well. We invite agents to your property, and then we have a whole social media department that we blow up our marketing in. And then we have this thing called a 10-day blitz. We get offers in, and this is when we're back at open houses where we have an open house, we'll have a broker's, we'll have another open house, and all offers are due. it creates a frenzy process for you to get as many offers as you can. Then once the offers come in, Khalil comes back in and he does some research with the buyer and the agent, right? He do his due diligence. We're curious to find out what the motivation is of the buyer and his ability to buy. Right? Khalil will put a counter offer together. It gets accepted. You're in escrow. So that first whole section, that's even before you go into escrow, right? And keep in mind, each one of those bullets, there's probably about 15 to 40 different steps that we take. So we're a very system-driven, process-oriented, systematic approach to getting you from where you are now to the end. Then you go through escrow, you got an acceptance, you get a buyer's initial deposit, you make sure that the mortgage payoff instructions are completed. The title company will need that. We're gonna send the seller's disclosure statement, and then we're gonna coordinate the buyer's home inspection, make sure they get the survey. And then there comes the inspection itself, and we have to get them past the inspection period. That's the, outside of the initial purchase contract, that's the most contentious area of this entire process, where the buyer is gonna ask the seller to give them some kind of credit or to fix something, right? And that's where the rubber meets the pavement for us, and we wanna bring clarity to what the issue is, if it's real, how do we get through it and past it, right? And then the buyer has to put their second deposit down. They get their title report. If it's a condo or an association, that shows up and that gets it to them. They get a conditional loan commitment letter from the lender, the buyer does. And then we want to make sure that there's no weird conditions in there that have to be satisfied. Then they'll do a termite inspection and a final walkthrough, and then the signing of the documents and closing. Sounds easy, right? Yeah, it's very easy.
Real easy.
We've done this, is Carrie on the phone? Carrie, how many times have we done this? 1,100 times or something like that? Yeah, we've done it a few times. So we have a system behind it. And our goal is to make that seamless and easy, but also that we educate our clients to know what's gonna happen before it shows up. Trying to get ahead of the game is really the game, right? Being ahead. And in closing, you know, we started as realtors. I started 15 years ago when I didn't have as much gray hair. My wife joined me right after that. We built a team, a large team. I think there's 28 of us. Khalil, being our chief negotiator, handles all of our listings. What better person can you have negotiating your contract? 2 feet on the ground, local boy, Chinese bugger, who can get you all the money you can. Nah. Shouldn't have said that. That's bad. But yeah, part Hawaiian too.
Thanks.
And, I'm a school grad, but also a licensed attorney, right? Very smart young man that you cannot tip over, right? You just, you know those weeble wobble things. No, you can't tip him over. And then we started Senior Move Managers in Declutter Hawaii 10 years ago, where we helped over 750 families move from their house, deal with their stuff, right? If you have, and that's why trustees like us, because, you know, when mom and dad pass away, they're too busy to have to deal with the house. They're going to go through and take care of all their personal belongings. Everything else, we remove for them. Downsize, declutter, move. We sort it into 4 piles. We have a whole system behind that as well. And then for those of you who have investment properties, we built High Property Management, where we manage real estate properties for investors. I think we have 143 doors that we manage today. At a really high level. And then we had built Stage Hawaii. Stage Hawaii was built because staging was so darn expensive. Staging runs you $3,000 to $5,000 for 3 months. And we really believe in staging, so much so that we felt that we wanted to build it and price it so that it is affordable. So we went from $3,000 to $5,000 to $1,900 as our package. And we can do it cheaper because it's our company. And frankly, we don't make money on that necessarily, as it is a service provided at a discounted rate for our clients. And our buyer's agent, Tiffany, is amazing at it. You got to look at our listings, guys. You'll see the ones that are staged. They're beautiful. And that is not my skill set. And then Silver Spoons, which is a nonprofit designed to take care of older adults who cannot take care of themselves. We've, Julie and I, my wife and I, have committed to put 10% of all the profits in all of our for-profit entities into a nonprofit to serve and protect and care for older adults who are not our clients, people who do not have real estate, people who are in estate housing and are going to get kicked out if somebody doesn't help them. There's nobody out there that, there aren't enough people out there doing that, and we believe we're called to do this. So that's why we're doing it. Is there any other slides? I can't see the slides. Oh yeah, so we got 2 more weeks left. Actually 5 more seminars left. We're doing 8 seminars this month in May. So yeah, really cool. There's 20 participants on today. Let's see if we can get some more on. The next ones we have are for buyers on Saturday, this Saturday at 10:30. The top 10 things you want to know before buying a home. If you know anybody who's thinking about buying a home, you're going to want to dial in because there's some really important pieces of information that you're going to want to know, because buying a home is probably one of the largest investments you're going to make. Then the following week after that is building wealth through investing in real estate. We're going to talk about how do we do the investment game. And then the last one of the month will be your rights in buying a home. That's your 7 ways you can cancel. Now, on the seller side, there's 2 more. Next Thursday, we have how do I know when it's time to sell? And the last one is building wealth through a 1031 exchange. If you're interested, register at ihara.eventbrite.com or call the number below, or just let us know. Next slide. I think we're almost done. And closing up, you know, we have a simple mission. It's really to honor God by serving others with the highest level of competency, care, and compassion with uncompromising integrity. It doesn't cost us anything, and it's not that hard to do. So we would love you to leave us a feedback. Oh yeah, if you need a strategy session, yeah, let us know. Just raise your hand in the chat box, say contact me for a time that works. And we can do it by Zoom. We can do this from your house. There's no cost, no obligation. And if you all want time to meet with Julie Shen, then let us know also, and we'll connect you with her. We really would love your feedback, and that really gobbledygook number there, that's the one you want to click on to give us some feedback. And if you're looking for other webinars, just go to our EHAR team, hawaii.kw.com. There's a drop down called webinars, and you can just see what's coming on next, as well as invite your friends to it. And if you're curious about what virtual walkthroughs look like, iharateamhawaii.kw.com/virtual_walkthroughs is where you'll find all of our walkthroughs. All right.
All right. Any other questions for either the Ihara team or Miss Julie Suen?
Thank you, Oscar, and thank you, May. Appreciate your comments there. Thanks, Martin.
Well, if nothing else, you know, thank you guys very much for attending. Please contact us with any questions, feedback. If you have real estate or estate planning needs, you know, we're your guys. And Julie is here for you for all your estate planning needs.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Kaleo.
Yeah.
I left my email address in the chat box. Feel free to take that down. You can contact me at any time if you have any questions. I do offer a free checklist for all successor trustees. Shoot me an email. I'll forward that to you. Doesn't cost anything. And yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
We look forward to seeing you soon. See you Saturday. Saturday? Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. If you're coming back, we'll see you Saturday. I'm not sure if I'm going to be in this part of the house, though. I don't know. My Wi-Fi was really bad today, so I went from my office to the living room. And not the greatest background, but you're in my living room. I wish I could see everybody else's living room. I see Kaleo's. See, Julie's got a nice living room.
Yeah.
I like your background.
Thank you. Thanks,
All right.
Lori.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Sorry for the overtime, but
Okay,
hopefully it's
aloha.
helpful.
Bye.
Aloha. Bye.
All right.